Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I thought it would be fun to do a themed recommendations video all about travel horror and horror books to read on vacation. I noticed a little bit of a trend in some of the horror books I was reading recently, and it's just the fact that they do tend to center around a lot of vacations. And I think it's the fact that it's natural for us to idolize going on vacation. We just think about it and dream about it when we're in the daily drudge of life, whether it be work or family or whatnot. And we always just think, oh, it'd be so great if I could go on vacation. So of course, it's natural for horror authors to take that concept, turn it on its head, and create some horror nightmares. I have some great books to recommend. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk about The Resort by Bentley Little, which centers around a family that has a couple of young children that go on vacation to a resort in Arizona. At first, it seems wonderful, but as you would expect, things start to go to some strange places. Now, while I'm talking about a horror book centered around a hotel, this is not a haunted house story. Instead, this is more the Bentley Little flavor of horror, which, if you're not familiar with, is very satirical. He basically takes very normal, everyday occurrences and just goes over the top. His books are a little bit psychological, very gross, sometimes sexualized, and he basically makes the most uncomfortable vacation experience you can imagine. And this book was definitely gross to the point that I was a little bit uncomfortable. Now, I will admit that this isn't my personal favorite of Bentley Little's work, but it does fit the topic so well that I did want to include it. I should preface that by saying that I've never been to the desert area of the United States, and I've never been to a resort in general, so it's not a storyline I personally connect with, but I think it could be a lot more fun for someone who has that experience or perhaps is going through that experience while they're reading this book. There is an overactive activity coach that is just pushy and over the top. There are some problems with the rooms getting mixed up, and the staff at the hotel try so hard to be accommodating, but there's just something not quite right about them. And that's what makes this book so much fun, is that it's just ridiculous, over the top. It's so Bentley Little. If you haven't tried them before and are interested in the topic, this might be a fun one to check out. Next, if I'm going to talk about vacation horror, I have to include this one, otherwise I'm going to get 1,000 comments asking why I didn't. And so yes, I'm going to talk about The Ruins by Scott Smith, which is about a group of college friends that go on vacation to Mexico. They are staying at an all-inclusive resort. However, they decide to wander away and help someone find their family member. However, they end up at some ruins and they get forced into a situation that leads them into a survival story. And this is very much a story about the breakdown of relationships. You get to see how close these friends are and how much they're willing to do in order to protect themselves and put their own needs first. And of course, if you're going to Mexico, this would be a great one to bring along. I know I have horror friends online like Stephanie from That's What She Read that got a chance to go to the ruins, and what a fun experience that would be. So if you are thinking about it, this one is very much centered around college life and young friendship, and it's just fun to see it all fall apart, as you know it's going to in a horror book. This one is very gruesome. There is a lot of body horror, so keep that in mind, but if you can handle it, it's a very fun, addicting read. It is fairly long, but trust me, you will fly through it. It's definitely a great book to bring on vacation. Now, for something different, I want to talk about The Apartment by S.L. Gray. Despite the name, this is not a haunted hotel story. Instead, this is the story of a couple that go through a very violent, traumatic experience when they have a home invasion in their home in South America, and now they are just really uncomfortable in their house. They are grieving from the loss of that security that they once felt, and so in order to get back on their feet, their friends suggest that they go on vacation. But they really don't have the money to do it. So in order to go, they decide to do a house swap. So they swap homes with someone in Paris. And this story follows their adventures when they fly over there, they leave their daughter behind, and they go to a place that in the pictures looked perfect perfect and beautiful. But as you would expect, when they get there, it's not very nice. It's not what's advertised, and they find strange things around the apartment, and it's just not the best experience. This one, of course, would be perfect if you are so lucky as to go to France or, of course, Paris for vacation, and you really do get a little bit of the flavor of the city. You get little parts where they are going to bakeries and enjoying lattes and croissants and all that wonderful stuff. And then you get the aspect of the house swap. So I almost would discourage you from reading this book if you are going through a house swap yourself, because this book just reinforced my personal feelings that there are so many things that can go wrong when you give someone the keys to your own house or go into someone else's house and you don't know them beforehand. It just seems like a terrible situation. I know that lots of people do it online and it's perfectly fine, but I definitely have my hangups about it, and this book just made that worse. So if it sounds like a lot of fun, I would recommend this one. Compared to some of the other books I'm talking about here, it's nice that this one is focused on an older couple. So these aren't young college partiers, but rather an established couple that are really trying to get out of the daily grind. They, of course, have a young daughter, so they're in those years where they're just dealing with the ins and outs of being parents, and so this vacation is supposed to be a bit of an escape. I will say that it's actually a very emotional story. It's got some really complex but not the most likable characters, and I just thought this was very clever and dealt with some really big emotional issues like grief, which I wouldn't necessarily expect from a book with this setup. Now, going back to partiers, I also want to recommend The Forgotten Island by David Sodergren. And this is about a group of college students and friends that go off to party in Thailand. And this one, I always say, has a similar setup to the ruins, but it goes to some very different places. This one has more of a focus on the partying. So at the beginning of the story, you get to follow the characters and they are drinking, they are hooking up and making connections, and you very much get that escapist experience. I really got a good sense of what it would be like to party in Thailand, not that I've ever gotten to do that. So if you are doing more the young experience, this one would be a lot of fun. And this is one of these horror books that just has a little bit of everything. As you would expect, things go wrong, people go missing, and just terrible things ensue. And it blends together a lot of different subgenres of horror. I don't want to give away too much, but it's fun. It is some of my favorite kill scenes, and I just can't recommend it enough. I think that more people need to read it, and it would be perfect to read on vacation, especially if you're going anywhere hot with some drinks and some friends. And yeah, what else could go wrong? Finally, I want to recommend The Merciless Last Rites by Daniel Vega. This is technically the 4th book in her series, but it's a companion series, meaning that you can absolutely jump into this book without spoiling previous books or without needing previous knowledge. So this book follows new characters, specifically one young girl who has just graduated from high school. She went through something in her past because her best friend committed suicide, and she didn't react well to that. She ended up going to a party, getting on drugs, and through all that, she ended up in a mental institution. Now she is out and she is going on vacation to Italy with 2 of her other best friends. So she is meeting them in this beautiful small Italian town. You find out that this town has a history where there was a young virginal girl that was sacrificed in order to atone for the sins of the community. And that ties into the story because, as you would expect, things get bloody and gruesome because this is part of the Merciless series, which is a YA series, but an incredibly dark and brutal one. I have gushed about this series before, and I will say that this book definitely delivered. It is young adult, so do expect the things that come with that. There are definitely the tropes of it. The characters are young. There's a lot of focus on teen drama, specifically Mean Girls and all that ensues. As well, there are some love interests and some hooking up and all of that. So I'll say, of course, that this would be a great book if you're, say, in Italy, but it is a young person's experience in Italy. So they're not going to the Vatican mannequin. They're not touring some of the ruins, but instead going to parties and drinking and exploring the catacombs. And I really did enjoy this one. It was very fun, very addicting, and a fast read. So if you're up for another brutal book, because apparently I really like a lot of gruesome and bloody beach reads, this one would be great to pick up as long as you're okay reading a young adult book. So that is it for this video. Let me know down below what your plans are for holidays in this coming year and what you plan on reading. Are you going to use any of my recommendations, or maybe you have your own recommendations for books that you like to read on vacation? Whether or not they be horror, I would love to know. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed theme recommendations videos like this, please give it a thumbs up, share it online, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and drop a comment just giving me your feedback. I always appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.